Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome. Today we have an unboxing of something that has been on my radar for quite a long time. This is Gallipoli 1915, a game designed by Jeffrey Phipps and released in 2018 by GMT Games. This is, of course, about the Gallipoli campaign. Of course, it's called Churchill's Greatest Gamble because it was Churchill's plan to invade the soft underbelly of the Ottoman Empire, which ended up being at Gallipoli. Now, of course, relatively famously, the Allied forces, which included British, French, Australia, and New Zealand forces, maybe among others, I'm not an expert, famously got bogged down and picked to pieces by the Ottomans, in some measure due to the lack of promised Allied naval support. So the first thing you'd want to ask when you think about, okay, so we have a war game based on this, I mean, does this get boring and get bogged down? And the answer is no, because it only covers the first 3 days of that campaign when things were very mobile. It covers the initial amphibious assaults and the initial Turkish response. So let's take a look here. This is in a 2-inch box. I'm going to have a complaint about this later, I will tell you, and you'll see why as we get into it. Complexity level, according to GMT's scale, is 7 out of 9, and solitaire suitability is 6 out of 9. And I've seen the components, and it's a nice looking game. So let's open her up and see what we get. Now, 2018 release. So this is interesting to me because this is the thinner box stock. I haven't seen anything more recent from GMT on this box stock. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just thinner than what they're using now. So, I have a hunch that this was printed in the U.S. And among other things, we have a GMT quality control slip that we used to get in GMT games that says that Deb has packed and inspected this game. We don't really see those anymore. So we get a roll of baggies and we get 5 looks like Chessex 10-sided dice in different colors. So let's put that away. So let's see what we get. I haven't examined the components in detail. Now I will also point out that this is the Rifle and Spade series or something like that. And this is going to be continued. The current Mons 1915 game that is on GMT's P500 right now is the next game in the series. And there are a number of enhancements and streamlinings and things like that that will be seen in the Mons game. Some of which you can actually download already. If you go to the BGG site, and maybe the GMT site as well for Gallipoli 1915, you'll see an updated rulebook and updated player aids and stuff. All right, so what we have here is a 36-page glossy stock full color rulebook. Nice looking rulebook, actually. Done very much in the GMT style. Those of us who are familiar with GMT games will definitely be comfortable here. Not a lot of illustrations, which is also not really that surprising. Designer Jeffrey Phipps and developer Scott McConaughey. May or may not be pronouncing that correctly. Map art by Jeffrey Phipps and Mark Simonich. Counters by Jeffrey Phipps and Mark Simonich. Always like to know who did the maps and the counters, at least. So we also have a landscape format charts and tables book, and it looks like this is an 8-page booklet. It is. It looks like we have 2 of them. Okay, so we have a sequence of play in here. And we have, so in lieu of like a player aid card, which you would presumably need like 4 of them, we have these player aid booklets instead with all the essential charts and tables. So I've looked at this. This is the assault results table. I'm going to probably call it a CRT. And it looks super intimidating. So we'll see how bad it is. A lot of times when CRTs look super intimidating, once you've used them twice, it's not really much of a problem. And then here's a fire results table, which looks less intimidating, but I see decimals on here, which is, I want to say that this may use percentile rolls, if that's possible. So we'll see how all that works in the future. Here's the free landing charts and tables. So I know that you have some flexibility in figuring out where the amphibious invasions are going to occur. Here's an extended sequence of play card. Yes. There's a lot of player aids in here. Here's the game turn record track. So you can see, so 4 days actually, 25, 26, 27, 28 April, and it ends at the end of 28 April. And the turns, the day turns at least, are 2 hours, and then it looks like there is 2 4-hour night turns. So this is a single-sided on medium weight cardstock, I would say. Here we have a unit key. It's always nice when this is included on its own thing. We have a unit key, and on the back we have a terrain key. And we have actual heights in meters associated with the various terrain colors as well. And when we see the map, you'll get at least a look at that. All right, a lot of stuff in here. Okay, so here's an us versus them holding boxes. I'm not sure how that's supposed to work, to be honest. Here is Entente holding boxes. A, B, S, X, Y, V, and W. And here is Ottoman holding boxes, A through F. And then routed and dead pal locations. Landing sled sheet. So I think the idea is that you are going to put your landing units on this card in preparation for them showing up on the map. And the same thing with landing sled sheet 2. Now here we have Entente Counter Sled number 1. This is, by the way, I'll get this out of the way, a 2-map game with the 2 maps oriented in an interesting way that is not just like butted up against one another. And I'll show the back of the box again, and so you can get a sense of that. Given the shape of the peninsula, that makes sense. So here's what I take to be like your landing places for all of the Allied units. We have what looks like 3 of those, and then Ottoman Counter Sled. Counter Sled is a piece of terminology that I have not encountered before, so I'm not going to try to speculate exactly what it means. I have looked at the game, but I didn't find... I mean, I kind of know what they do. That's the important thing. Here's more Entente Counter Sled. And the color coding is indicative. So this is... let's see here. So the bar across the top is the brigade, and then the counter color appears to be the higher level formation, which in this case would be probably a division. And then here we have Ottoman Counter Sled number 2. Yeah, that holds up. Okay, and then we have a lot of interestingly shaped displays here. So we have an Army status display, sheet number 1. Army status display, sheet number 2. I think the divisions are organized into armies. And then number 3. This is relatively involved handling mechanisms here. So I don't want to wildly speculate and say something stupid. Ottoman emergency flying column status display. So that is a thing that you can do. Now, what's left in the box after all that stuff is 2 more booklets, 2 maps, and 6 counter sheets. So let's take a brief look at the map so I can at least give you a sense of the art style. As I mentioned, let me show you the map orientation here. So you have one map that kind of goes straight, and the other one kind of comes in at 60 degrees. So to get the entire peninsula on map. So I think the map is pretty clear here. I don't really see people having much trouble telling the terrain apart, but since it's just hex by hex, and then we have certain hex sides that are called out. This might be some kind of a ravine of some kind, maybe. I don't know. And again, there are 2 of these maps. These are on pretty typical GMT stock. They're a bit glossy, but not super glossy. The stock is kind of heavy, but not super duper heavy. We also have a setup and reinforcements booklet. So, in tabular format, this gives us all the setups. And of course, most of the setup is going to be the Ottoman stuff, because the Ottomans, it's Ottoman territory, right? So the Ottomans start on the map, and the Entente forces are going to be entering the map as the game proceeds. So, and this is a 16-page black and white booklet dedicated to PTE, does that mean private? I don't know. Roy Clarence, Phipps, 25th Battalion, AIF. And Private Bernard George Morris, Stretcher Bearer, 3rd Battalion, AIF. Of course, these would be folks, Jeffrey's great uncle and wife's grandfather. Okay, and here's the Rifle and Spade series rules. Now, this is where I think the real improvements are going to end up happening with the new game. This is a 40-page glossy full-color booklet. Very much would like to dig into this. This is the booklet that I have looked at a little bit. It is noticeably more illustrated than the game-specific rules, which may be completely justified. And again, in a very standard GMT format that all of us very familiar with GMT games will be very familiar with. And then we have our 6 counter sheets. So here's the thing. Let's take all of this stuff, and there's quite a bit of stuff. Now, I know that a lot of wargamers put their dice in the box. I tend not to, because I have a literal cabinet full of dice. So I'm going to ignore the notion of storing the dice in the box. And I think I can get 2 counter trays in this box. The box probably will bulge a little bit if I do. Now that's including all the materials, but not the counter sheets, which of course we won't have to store in there. This is 6 counter sheets. It's going to be pretty uncomfortable getting 6 counter sheets into 2 counter trays. I've done it before. I could probably do it here. What I am more likely to end up doing is using a baggy organizational scheme. Now, considering that GMT themselves does they order the counter trays and sell the counter trays, you would think that they would take that into account when they decide what box size to publish these games in. Then again, I don't know what the cost difference is between printing a game in a 2-inch box and printing a game in a 3-inch box. Maybe it's prohibitive and they don't want to do it unless they absolutely have to. That is plausible. Nevertheless, I will continue to whine about this subject as I have for many years. Now, these are on what I would have previously considered the standard GMT white core stock. It is thinner than the stuff I have seen from them lately. At some point between the printing of this in 2018 and the printing of everything I've seen from them in the last year or two, they went to a much thicker counterstock, a brown core counterstock, which I really like, although there's a couple of examples where they're so thick that I have trouble getting them into my clipper. Nevertheless, I do like the counters. I think the counters look nice and clean while containing tons of information, and they're very clear. You have a sheet or 2 of markers at the back as well. Probably my initial thought on this is I gotta tell you, my organizational idea for this involves baggies. I'm not a fan of baggies. I strongly prefer counter trays, but if I'm gonna have to get 6, I'd have to get these into baggies and these into 2 trays, which then I could do, but then the box would bulge more. And bulging boxes are boxes that end up with blown corners. So that rant aside, I do very much like the look of Gallipoli 1915, Churchill's Greatest Gamble here. That is why I picked it up. I would say, I kind of feel like the series is going to come into its own with Mons, the next volume in the series, which again is on P500 right now with GMT, so check that out if you are interested in the series. It is kind of a grand tactical World War I, which I think is, reasonably speaking, the lowest scale of World War I titles that is probably going to be of interest to me personally. So, Gallipoli 1915. Hopefully you found this a bit informative. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to support Ardwulf's Lair, please do check out the Patreon, Ko-Fi, and merch store links in the video description. Until next time, thanks again for watching, and happy wargaming.